Hi everyone, today we have a Wurlitzer 2204 jukebox, and I had rebuilt the amp for this jukebox a while back. It's a Wurlitzer 532 amplifier, and it sounded really good on the bench, but when we put it in the jukebox, the bass sounds really good, but the treble is a bit weak and muffled. So today we're going to take it apart and see if we can improve that. First thing we need to do is remove the back panel, so we're just going to twist these two tabs here. Next we're going to remove the bottom panel, and there's two tabs that we're going to twist on either side here, and then we pull this pin back and it should pop straight out. Alright, so according to the schematic diagram for the Wurlitzer 2100 to 2250 models, we have the cabinet speaker network here, and we can see that there's a few capacitors, 36, 37, and 38, as well as a resistor in here. And my guess is that the original capacitors and resistors are in this network here and need to be replaced. They go bad over time, and this model actually came out in 1958, so these capacitors are probably very dry and in need of replacement. So in the 2204 jukebox, the capacitors and resistors can be found underneath this cover here. So the first thing we're going to do is just remove these 4 bolts and remove this cover here. So now that the cover is removed, we can see that we have a couple carbon barrel resistors there and a can capacitor. So it looks like these are indeed the original capacitors and resistors. So in order to replace these, we're gonna have to pull this speaker out just so we can work with it. So there's 4 bolts in the corners there. We'll just remove those 4 and pull it out. Okay, so we have that 4-inch speaker removed. Just to give myself a little bit of room, I'm also going to unplug this speaker here so that we can pull this out just a little bit further. Alright, so I need to read the values of that capacitor, so we're actually going to disconnect the whole speaker network. So I'm just going to pull the plug here, and we'll also remove the speaker plug from the amp, and we'll pull this guy out onto the bench. Now that we have the capacitor out, I can clearly see that it's a 4 microfarad capacitor rated at 25 volts. I'm pretty sure that because this capacitor is so old, it's no longer holding a charge. But it doesn't matter. To be safe, we're going to make sure that we bridge the 2 ends. I'm just using some set of insulated needle nose pliers here, and I'm just bridging one end to the other end on the tack strip there, just to make sure that we discharge it fully. All right, so now that we have the speaker out, I can also see the value of the resistors here. It looks like we have a brown, black, silver. Silvers are 10% tolerance. Brown is our 1, black is our 0. We got 10 ohms with 1 times multiplier, so 10. Should be 10 ohms each with a 10% tolerance. The purpose of this 4 microfarad capacitor and the resistors in this speaker network here are basically to act as a filter for this high frequency speaker here, and to pass treble onto this high frequency speaker, but block any of the bass to protect the speaker. Now that we have the speaker out, we can see that the schematic that they have for the speaker network here is not what we're seeing in the 2204 model. This schematic was actually for the 2100 to the 2250, so my guess is that this is probably for another jukebox. So what we're going to do is just keep it the same as what we have from the original installation, and we'll be replacing this capacitor with a 4 microfarad capacitor and these 2 resistors with two 10 ohm resistors in parallel. But I think the next step is to remove those and just verify that we are indeed getting in that 10 ohm range. So because we have 2 10 ohm resistors in parallel, the equivalent series resistance is actually going to be giving us 5 ohms across that. So if we do a measurement, I expect to see close to 5 ohms across those terminals there. So we'll do a quick measurement with the multimeter. Okay, so I have my multimeter set to ohms, and I'm testing across the 2, and I'm getting about 8 ohms. Not surprised, these carbon barrel resistors tend to drift over time, but we'll also remove them and test them each individually. Alright, so to remove these resistors and the capacitor, I'm just going to add a little bit of flux to both ends here. I'm going to use a solder wick and just soak up as much solder as I can. Go. Once the solder has been removed, I'm just going to straighten out these pins with a tweezer, and then we should be able to pull them straight through. There we go, there's one, and the other one. Perfect. I'll just repeat that same process on the other side here with the tack strip. Remove that solder and pull those resistors out. Alright, so with these resistors out of circuit, we have our multimeter set to ohms. We are seeing 17 on one, and on the other one we are seeing 13. Like I said, I think the value of these are actually 10 ohms each, but because they're carbon barrel resistors, they drift higher over time. So we're going to replace each one of these with two 10 ohm resistors. We're going to do the same thing to the other side and remove this connection from the capacitor to the tack strip. Alright, so I was able to unsolder this other connection here. So now what I'm going to do is just cut this clamp that's holding the capacitor in place so we can get it removed. So our 4 microfarad 25 volt can capacitor is now removed, and we're going to be replacing it with a Dayton Audio 4 microfarad 250 volt capacitor. These are really good for audio filtering. As you can see here, it's a precision audio grade, especially designed for audio filtering. So now we're ready to get our components in place. So I'm going to start by placing those two resistors in this tack strip here. So we're going to be using two 10 ohm metal film resistors that are rated at 1 watt. And I'm just going to start by adding a little bit of flux to the connection. And now we can add some solder. Alright, so now I got my capacitor in place, and once again I'll add a little bit more flux to the tack strip there. And now we're ready for a little bit of solder. Now I'm just going to go and twist these wires together here at the end. Get our resistors are in parallel, connect our capacitor, and then we can cut off the excess. Go. I'm going to add some flux to that connection. And finally we can add some solder. Make sure that that connection is nice and solid. I'm just going to put some rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip and clean up the flux on these contacts here. Alright, so I just added a little bit of electric tape on the end there, and I think we're ready to try this back in the jukebox. So our speaker connections are back in place, and we're ready to give it a try. So that's how you can improve the treble and sound on a Wurlitzer 2204 jukebox when it's getting washed out on the high end with a little bit too much bass. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.